Welcome back to my channel. This is Professor Dawn Wooten, and today we're going to talk about how to write a rhetorical analysis. It's about exploring the how instead of the why. So when we talk about how instead of why, what we're talking about is the difference between rhetorical analysis and literary analysis. In literary analysis, you as the writer are explaining why an author used specific strategies, why the plot is structured the way it is, why the characters act the way they do, and why the story resolves the way it does. In rhetorical analysis, you as the writer must focus on how an author successfully writes a piece. What strategies did the author use? What appeals are present? How does the author prove his or her credibility? We start with the rhetorical triangle. The rhetorical triangle was originally conceived by the Greeks and uses three strategies we call the appeals: logos, which is logic and reason; ethos, ethics or credibility; and pathos, emotion and beliefs. Logos refers to reason and logic or evidence and is designed specifically for the text. Ethos, the credibility, refers specifically to the writer. And pathos, values, beliefs, and feelings, are directly attributed to the audience. So let's talk about logos. When writing rhetorically, the author must provide reasons, logical conclusions, and evidence to prove his or her claims. For example, a writer could not simply say, "Demons are real." That's an opinion. The writer must provide evidence or logical reasons to back up this statement. Demons have been mentioned in literature throughout history, including the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, and other religious works. In addition, there are case studies of exorcisms where the church has determined that demons do possess and have inhabited the bodies of humans. Source, page 13. In this instance, the writer has used logos to back up his or her claim. If you were writing a rhetorical analysis, this would be one example you could mention of how the writer uses logos as an appeal. Ethos, or ethics, is an appeal of credibility. What credentials does this author have that makes him or her believable? When writing a rhetorical analysis, you will have at least 2 paragraphs explaining why the author is a credible writer for the material. This is essential. In the example from the previous slide, an author writing on demons would be considered credible with the following credentials: a PhD or other advanced degree in theology or demonology, 15 to 20 years of experience in theological studies and/or case studies, previously published on the same subject, and taught extensively on the subject at the university level. Pathos, or pathos, I use those pronunciations interchangeably, so I'm sorry if I confuse you. Pathos is the use of emotional appeals to reach the reader. For someone reading the previously mentioned example of an article on demons, an emotional appeal would seek to reach the reader's fear, anxiety, religious beliefs, or other emotional states that come with reading about the topic. Here's an example of an emotional appeal. Demons seek out those who are weak in or have no faith. They look for the cracks in a person's spirituality and exploit them. Those who become possessed are tormented physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Source, page 25. The use of emotional appeal would be enough to make the reader question his or her own faith, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities. In this case, the author would have successfully used pathos. So what is the overall process for writing a rhetorical analysis? First, it's very straightforward. Don't overthink it. There are certain things that you, as the analyst, are looking for. What is the rhetorical situation? In other words, why was this piece written? Where was it published? And what audience are you trying to reach? Who is the author or speaker? Again, let's look at the credibility of the person presenting the information. What is his or her intention in speaking? Are they seeking to inform? Are they seeking to entertain? What is their purpose? Who makes up their audience? Go beyond the general audience. In the aforementioned example on demons, the audience would be a general audience, certainly, but targeted audiences may include those who are studying theology, those who are practicing theologists or clergy. It could be very specific people. What is the content of the message? How are we using those appeals? What is the form in which it is conveyed? Is it an online article? Is it a published journal article? Is it a chapter in a book? Those are all the different forms. Is it a podcast? Is it a video? Those are all forms of texts. How do form and content correspond? So if the content is on demonology and the form is a video, think about how the presenter could use imagery to further enhance the argument or position they were taking in their paper. Does the message, speech, or text succeed in fulfilling the author's or speaker's intention? This is the crux of most rhetorical analysis papers. Is the author successful in fulfilling his or her intentions, in proving his or her thesis? What does the nature of the communication reveal about the culture that produced it? That is definitely something you can examine. How does a Christian culture look at demonology versus a Hindu culture or versus an Islamic culture? Those are things you can definitely explore in a rhetorical analysis. So when you're doing the analyzing, once you've chosen an article to analyze, you must first read through it very thoroughly. A single reading will not accomplish the goals you must meet for the assignment. Plan to read through the work 3 times with specific goals in mind each time. In reading 1, familiarize yourself with the topic, the author's style, and the general content of the piece. You're just getting to know it. In reading 2, begin highlighting important details or even examples of the appeals that you might end up using in your analysis. During the 3rd reading, highlight your author's credentials, identify specific rhetorical strategies used, and compare your worksheet questions to the article. And those would be those questions from a couple of slides ago. The outline for any rhetorical analysis is quite simple. You're going to begin with your introduction, where you summarize the article, and you must include the author's name, the article name, the date it was published, and the place of publication. Do this in 3 to 4 sentences maximum. Do not over-summarize the article. Just hit the main points. Your thesis statement is a single sentence, and it must be a single sentence, that includes the name of the text you're analyzing, whether or not the author was successful in making his or her point, and what rhetorical strategies you'll be analyzing. Here's an example. In the article, New Treatments for Diabetes, and we know it's an article because it's in quotations, John Smith, who's the author, is successful in teaching his audience about new treatments by using logos, vocabulary, and pathos. The body of the paper. You want to include your author's credentials and background. This is the ethos. the credibility. Include their education and professional credibility, the number of previous publications they've had, where the author has been published, are the publishers reliable and well respected? You can move on to uses of logos and or pathos. What evidence does the author use to support his or her thesis? Does the author cite other experts? Is the author's use of emotional appeals effective? And then you can move on to uses of other techniques such as tone, vocabulary, style, or an evaluation of the audience or audiences that might be interested in reading this particular writing. And then you'll have your conclusion, where you restate your thesis statement. Try to rewrite it as best you can and not copy and paste it. Review the author's thesis and how his or her use of these techniques was or was not successful in proving the thesis of the piece. And then use a wrap-up statement to let your reader know that you're done with your analysis. Cited page. For any rhetorical analysis, you will have to cite the article analyzed at minimum. You must have the name of the article, the reference for it on a works cited page or reference page, depending on whether you're using MLA or APA. You may also have to research your author to find his or her credentials, and any sources used for that purpose must also be cited. Some students have even found it helpful to use additional outside sources for their analysis. I would, however, caution against using too many additional resources, as this will more than likely create a research paper rather than a rhetorical analysis, and it also runs the risk of becoming source heavy, meaning you've done very little of your own writing and are relying entirely on source material to make your argument for you. And that's not what we want. Watching this video on how to write a rhetorical analysis. If you have any questions on your assignments, make sure to contact your professors or instructors directly. I'm Professor Wooten, and I hope you have a great day.